Howdys and salutations, y'all! Welcome back to another Miquella stream, because we stream Miquella here 24/7, 365, or at least whenever we're online. I'm not sure this will ever end. But for real, happy Monday to everyone, or whenever you happen to be watching this. I suppose for some places it might be Tuesday live already. I'm sure anyone on the VOD, it could be any stinking day of the week. Maybe we've invented a new day of the week, gotten away from the Gregorian calendar. Who knows? Maybe a little unlikely. I think Thor would get mad if we took his day away. But in any case, I hope y'all have been doing well. I've been doing pretty good too, just been keeping busy. Unfortunately, sorry again that we couldn't do a stream yesterday. I literally, I woke up for it, and I was like, I will be, physically ill the rest of the week if I don't sleep more. So I just had to throw the message out there and be like, sorry, I can't. So, very happy to, not be basically unconscious right now, but also very happy to be back streaming again. Now, the other reason that I wasn't immediately as hard crunched yesterday about forcing myself to stream as I might normally be is Miquella's thrown just a little bit of a curveball at me, and a different one from the usual sort he throws at me, which has left me at a slight loss. For you see, we've already finished everything we set out to do this month, but rather stubbornly the month isn't over yet, so now I gotta figure out what we're gonna do for these 2 days. And while there's plenty of good options, well, frankly, this week is also just my annual doctor's appointment week. A whole bunch of stuff landed in the same week, and so I've been kind of out of sorts and unable to really kick stuff up going. That's an excuse, and I know y'all don't need one of those, but suffice it to say, sorry, we're probably just gonna keep doing the same stuff we've been doing. But for me, and what's got me excited, is that the stuff we done been doing is Miquella drawing, and I am excited about that. However, before we just go all in on it blindly and jump into the shades and values and stuff with a little less harshness now that we've worked out some proper intensity stuff. Oh, and I am so excited about this. I know that the final won't be this harsh. It won't be this stark. It will be more muted. But I'm going to try to maintain this best as I can with a relatively stark contrast. And what I mean by that is, normally when we're doing a drawing, I've gotten to using this color palette, which is actually one that I found recommended in the notes on a webcomic years ago. I think that was... Oh, it says EGS. Okay, it must have been Elguna's Shive. Man, I haven't... Mixed recommendation on that. I enjoy it, but it's also definitely not one that's going to be to everyone's tastes. And the comic itself is, I would say, pretty much family friendly. Yeah, it's a safe bet. It's bizarre, but it's not bad. However, some of the sketchbook stuff, I would say leans into it's not fully out there, but it is sketchier territory. So I would say maybe if you want to read it, stick to the main comic, and maybe the AGSNP, which is secondary bonus comic, alternate world stuff, also goes a little sketchier than the main. Nothing terrible. I will say that. Nothing utterly dreadful in any of it, but the main comic is definitely what I found first, and all the other stuff years later. So, anyway, that artist, for what it's worth, gave excellent tips and stuff and tools that were actually useful, not just the list of pens or whatever, but value advice. Not valuable advice, well it was, but also literally advice about values. And this was the color palette that they used, whether they were doing a grayscale comic or a color one, and they do both at various times. That comic's been running for 20 plus years at this point. But they gave this sort of set of values to work with, or at least close to it, this type of incrementation between it, which has sort of been useful for me, because y'all remember with the Melania one, I knew that I wanted to do harsh values, but I didn't have any experience with it. So I just kind of went with these 5. I don't even remember how I determined them. I have no idea. Maybe I pulled them from the image and set them to the grayscale. Maybe not. I don't know. But this sort of flat, nicely paced, it's enough that you're never running out of colors, but it's not so many that you hyper proliferate on the values, not colors, sorry. And it's been great. But it also means that we have a little bit of wiggle room to play in. Because if we only had 5 values, and then we're like, we're only going to use the light and dark ones, we would end up with something almost as stark a contrast as this, which, don't get me wrong, would be an awesome style, but it's not entirely what we're aiming for with this. I want, like, a little more... softness isn't the right word, radiant is kind of the right word, but, like, just more intricacy with the values, basically. I don't want it to be flat. I want to have, like, a little variance, add a little texture, without going, like, nuts. So what I think I'm going to do, and we'll see how this plays out, I'm pretty sure that my plan is that for all of the sections of Miquella, and the background too, for what it's worth, anything that is currently black, or this is actually a dark gray of sorts, will only be from this top row of 5. Maybe even just the first 4. We'll see how much variance we end up wanting to do, but we're going to stay top row for it. That way we're still keeping the really stark contrast, because you don't need, like, these 2 values alone would be enough to do something, but I just happen to want to do a little more. So sticking to these top ones will keep it all nice and close. There won't be, like, harsh starkness, even between, like, the first and last really isn't a huge jump. 26 versus 0. As opposed to the difference up here when we got, like, 92, or even these middle ones in the 50s. Well, this one's in the 50s. I don't know if the others are. Okay, yeah, that one is too. 59, 42. Okay. Whew, it is. I must have the fan going right down my back or something. I'm sorry if my voice is wobbly. I'm actually just, like, stinking shivering. Probably a couple reasons for that. But we'll get to that. The other thing, in the meanwhile, with these white ones, we'll probably stick to just these bottom 3, because these highlights are few and far between, and they need to really pop, but they also don't need to have a ton of variance between them. At least, not currently. We'll see how this goes, but I'm thinking that's what we're going to do. And these ones... 92, 80, what was that, 84 and 75? Really close together. And then I may just completely cut this middle row out. That way we get our nice little, like, array of value. We can still have some of the depth that you can add with value, like being able to have, like, slight shadows and stuff in the light zones, having some texture to the hair. But we won't have it all just, like, blur together by using all of these and lose this awesome contrast we built. There we go. That's why right-clicking wasn't working. But before we jump into that too much, I am also going to say this might actually be a somewhat low-drawing stream today. And the reason for that is that I have managed to injure my wrists a little bit. Not a ton, I don't think. I just need to let them rest. But, like, I'm going to have to take it easy. So there may come a point where I just have to call it tonight and say, nope, we can't do anymore. And that's also part of why I'm talking longer now. I know I'm naturally rambly on a good day, of course, but even now I'm taking it slow kind of on purpose. And that is because even just after my work day today, my wrists are feeling a little bruised, and my grip is feeling weak. Not that I can't grip all the way, but trying to, like, increase the grip pressure, like, direct 1-to-1 increases pain in my wrist, which feels like it's probably a bad idea. So I'm going to try to take it easy. My drawing setup, I'll admit, is not perfect posture. It could be worse, it could be much better. So we're just going to play it by ear, but play it cautiously. Now, I'd love to tell you that it was something heroic and amazing that I did that injured my wrists, having gotten into a noble sword fight with a home invader, only to eventually convince them to go with a diplomatic route while fending them off with one hand and simultaneously pouring tea with the other. However, the real answer... is that my vacuum cleaner got a bunch of hair tangled in, and I hurt my wrist trying to get the hair out of it. It's the dumbest, most mundane thing in the world, but that's life, ain't it? So, I'm gonna just take it easy. Maybe not do any crazy drawing marathon challenges in the near future. Definitely not Swordtember. That's definitely not starting in 4 days. So I need to not injure myself badly before that. So I'm just gonna take it easy, and we'll go from there. So in lieu of that, we've got something that I'm going to look at before we do the art, because we need to put a little thought into something. In the original design of this, Miquella did not have this talisman. However, both because it's interesting lore-wise, story-wise, and all that jazz to have a talisman, and because I've realized the composition actually plays really nicely with having a talisman centered here. Not entirely purposeful, but we're going to lean into it now. And, like, because, I mean, the wrinkles of the fabric emanate out from it, even the curve of the sword kind of seems to, so while the emphasis is certainly on the blade, There will also be this emphasis, and especially without the line work, if I can hide that, we'll have a more ominous view of Miquella. Not necessarily the sympathetic eyes that I've initially given him in this sketch. We'll see. We may hint at it. We'll see how we decide to do that in the final version. But whatever happens, even his gaze has always been directed somewhat at us, but also somewhat at this by accident. It's mostly meant to be aimed at us, and we may yet aim more at us. But that's something that can be done more with shading than line work, if we truly want to. But I kind of like the idea of this talisman. However, it needs to be something significant, and the only reason I even considered including it is because Miquella has several very significant items in the game. Man, you can tell I've been watching like YouTube long reviews because I'm starting to enunciate. Several significant items in the game. Now, leading into the... Yeah, I think I'm in my presenter voice. You know, I probably should be in my presenter voice for streaming, but, yeah, no, y'all are getting the more... the quote-unquote unfiltered, as if I have anything I need to filter in the first place. I am stinking mundane as I'll get out, which I kind of like. I'm happy with that. But we'll be continuing the mundanity rather than... I'm sure that's not a word. Mostly sure. English is flexible. We can make it a word. We'll make that a word. Mundanity. Mundanity. We'll even start with conflicting pronunciations, just to really, really kick things off. Pardon me. Despite my enthusiastic voice, I am also still just a hair tired, although not anything like last week. Thankfully, we've gotten a fair chunk of sleep, and we're doing much better. So, I'm going to... while we do this, pull up, and I guess find a spoiler warning for the talismans in Elden Ring. These are items you can equip that give you various benefits. Depending on how many bosses you've beaten, you can equip various numbers of them. I don't think it's crazy to say spoilers that they exist, because I'm certainly not giving away where they are, but this will give away what they do, because we're on Fextra Life, which for better or for worse is like a nice interface to share things. Except when it goes all advertisement-y. As I said, let me actually, before we have a repeat of the other one where it just straight up doxes my location with an advertisement because ads are hot garbo misery fests, let's just, zoop. There, now y'all don't have the ads, and I'll just have to keep a view on making sure that y'all can see stuff okay. And I don't scroll to some weird angle like this, because I can still see the top, the Cerulean Cerulean Amber Medallion, not Medamulet, which is what I was about to say. That's definitely not a word. We're inventing a whole lot of vocabulary today. But yeah, so let's take a look through some of these. However, before we do that too soon, I do actually have to go check one thing real quick, so I'll be back in 10 seconds. I'll leave this on screen, it's not that long. Okie dokie, I am back now. Sorry about the slightly longer than promised 10-second delay. Let's take a look-see. Now, the problem is these aren't mentioning the lore behind them, so I'm going to have to go off of my own memory and knowledge. And the fact that the medallions actually, wonderfully, are actually pretty clear visually. For the most part. Now, I don't think we need to worry about any of these ones so far. the one I had hoped would have a good fit, and unfortunately does not in this case, was one of these square ones, because I love the style and look of these. You've got the Star Scourge, the Prosthesis Wearer, the Stargazer, and the Two Fingers. And while at this point I feel like I have a decent sense of who and what each of those things are... Hold on. Oh, I guess it's like a mirror reflection, and wow. Ominous as ever, those two. I know just enough to know those, don't have a ton to do with Miquella. This one, tangentially. But really, what I'd love to find is something either about Miquella, or better yet, let's see. Godwyn. Not Godfrey, not Godric, definitely not Godric, but Godwyn. Now, I see two on here that would fit the bill, but are also gross and nasty, and would not look great in the composition, so I'm going to keep looking, and see what we can find, because I know there's some interesting stuff. Let's see. The Faithful's canvas and the Flock's canvas. I actually have forgotten who these folks are, if I ever knew. Fascinating. Looks like they've got some friends in this version. The Graven Masses are certainly interesting. There's Radigan. There's the Roar. Companion Jar, which is adorable. Old Lord's Talisman, which is just super cool. Perfumers, which is super ominous. Carrion Warrior Jars Godfrey. Magic Scorpion, nope. Blue Dancer, nope. Although pretty. I don't remember the Bull Goat's Talisman. Hold on, where's... Reduces poise damage taken. Well, that would have been handy in some of my old builds. Ah! No wonder I never found that. I know where that is, and I went in there once and turned right the heck around. And still died before I got out, but I didn't go back. Crucible Scale, Crucible Feather, Crucible Knot. Red Feathered Branch Sword, Blue Feathered Branch Sword, Ritual Sword. Interesting. And Ritual Shield. Also interesting. Winged Sword. Huh. You know, I'm finding some that I didn't entirely recognize. Oh right, you can also just straight up get Millicent's prosthesis. I don't think he would have had that, though. Actually, mayhaps, but probably not. I need to check on this one. Combat to honor the air tree. Oh, it's this one. Okay, yes, yes, yes. Well, actually, if that's where I think it is, it ain't. Lost. Okay. Going back to talismans. This one would, of course, be significant for different reasons. Godskin Swaddling Cloth is horrifying. Prepus's Vial. Well, dang, that's handy. That's just a permanent talisman you can get? Ooh, holy moly. And then this one never got added to the game, best as I can tell. Okay. Gonna be some arguments and discussions there. Where is this? Ah! I see also why I never got that. I did not do the Volcano Manor quest. Man, there's so stinking much in that game still. Still! Okay. Well, unfortunately, I didn't necessarily find what I would have liked to find. However, I did have a backup. And I'm okay with that. This is what we even originally drew. And, let's take a look-see for Trina's Lily. jump back into it. We'll see if we want to bother illuminating this in any sort of detail or not. And if we don't, then I will make a fictional talisman. It certainly doesn't need a crazy amount of detail in order to still be significant. Pardon me. I'm so sorry about that. Yes, the joys of Trina's lilies and their non-respawningness. Still, what we got in way of images? Diddly squat. Cool. I wouldn't say exceedingly rare to find. They're around. Obviously, there's like a stinking ton of them. I mean, not... Actually, there are some that they can... there's some monsters that drop them. Okay, so it's... Whoa, okay. I clicked nothing and it, like... Oh, stinking one of those stupid ads that extends longer than the visuals. Ugh. Misa hate. Hate those. But yes, cool. There's a specific spirit jellyfish, it looks like. And also the Clean Rot Knights. At 2%. Well, okay, maybe they're functionally finite. Oh boy. Okay. So we'll figure out how exactly we want to handle that when we get there. Let's see. Now, I think first off and foremost, we've got this wonderfully sketchy, like, plan, and I really do want to get better at, like, proper sketchy style stuff. Like, when you see concept art, it's not, like, usually hard and polished and refined edges. It's like, they're working it out. It's rough around the corners. And that's awesome. Because it always looks... Like, because of that roughness, like that intentional roughness, the intentional looseness, not only is it, you know, good for concept design iteration where you can go faster, and speed is obviously something we struggle with on episode 22, I think, of Miquella. But also, when you allow it to go a little more freeform, it allows sometimes intentional rough edges and, like, splatters in the right place and things like that. You can imply so much more detail and depth, like, better than you could render it directly, because our eyes genuinely don't focus on all of that normally, so the kind of fuzzy version almost ends up being, at minimum, equivalent, if not better, in some cases, because, you know, it's easy enough to make it where you've got so much detail that the focal point is absolutely murdered. So, it's something I want to learn to be better at. However, for the moment, for our initial flats, before we're doing all the fancy stuff, we're going to try to go for a slightly cleaner version of this. I'm going to go ahead and minimize that a little bit, so it'll just be a little shadow. I'm going to pull our, let's see, rough sketches are down there. Two-tone prep is a layer that we don't actually need anymore. Final sketch is, of course, already up here and fairly well finalized. Not that this may necessarily be in the final piece, or if it is, it will be most faint, I suspect. As we mentioned in the past, there's lots of line work cleanup that we're going to want to do. That may end up being tomorrow's stream, truth be told. Maybe a little bit today. I didn't want to mess with it while my wrists were a little bit unhappy, so I'm going to jump to, well... Okay, now that is the question. If we do the line fills and all the nice flats and clean edges and stuff, and then we clean up our line work, we're going to have to redo a lot of the line fill edges and stuff, because the lines they're filling to will have changed. With that in mind... Pardon me on that, pardonnez-moi. With that in mind, perhaps it would be better to have a go at cleaning up some of this line work. And I realize, to my chagrin, that, slight noise warning incoming. Sorry, had to move the microphone, my bad. to my chagrin, that we are still on the smaller canvas size than we've been doing with our modern work, which means that to some extent there's going to be fuzziness and edges that we cannot resolve. Doesn't mean that, you know, all of it's unsolvable. Let's see, we've got our final sketch here. Now, I could do a separate layer of inks and go over all of this again, and I will tell you right now I'm not going to do that. No. We've gotten trapped in redo purgatory for too many times on this project, and frankly the benefits just wouldn't be there. If there's a small section that I want to fully redo, rather than losing the progress, I'll just do that on a new layer, and then we can cut out the old stuff and merge the new layer into it. That's easier and has much less risk of losing progress, which is, you know, the thing to avoid. And in the meantime, I'm just going to clean this up like normal. And when I say clean this up, I do mean, like, you know, proper cleanup and stuff. Like, it's not like we're doing a brand new layer or some sort. Well, I mean, we made for some things, and the hair is going to be a tad more complicated, I'm seeing. But the hair is also going to be much more freeform and controlled by the values section anyway. No, for the main sketch, we have done it on a vector layer. And what that means is that all of these lines, for anyone who doesn't know, all of these little fun lines, this is not the right tool for it either, but we'll get to it. There we go. Lines you see, they're not like normal, like default, what they call raster layers, where it's just like these pixels are set to this color now. It's actually calculating, you draw a invisible line of sorts, and then the program goes and says, okay, I know this line is here, and I know the nature of the brush that we're using on this line, and the rules that we've set for this line, and now I'm going to render all of this form of it based on that invisible line. And you can see that invisible line here, in red. And what those little white dots are actually the heart of the quote-unquote line. It's not really a line so much as in itself, so much as it is those points and then calculating space between them. Because you can see that I can't do anything with... Well, I can drag the line as a whole around, and you can see it stays together. But... zoop. But it's when I mess with these control points that things get interesting, because I can zoop, warp it, and it's calculating, you know, this little dip here, that's not part of the line. This whole section curving a little bit and curving slowly into the top, that's not part of the line. That's being calculated from this point. The angle of the curve and all of that. The texture of the brush pattern is also something based on the brush itself, but it's being applied through this sort of line. And it's certainly not a new concept in art, not in the slightest, but it is a wonderful tool and is specifically the reason that I moved to Clip Studio Paint in the first place. Because there's a free open source program out there that does so much so well called Krita, or Krita, depending on how you pronounce it. I don't think anyone calls it Krita, but I've been proven wrong before. And Krita, for those who don't know. It is free, it is basically professional grade software, it is stinking wonderful. It's not industry standard, but it's certainly an industry known name, it's familiar. Not no name, but known, K-N-O-W-N name. And it's wonderful. However, it did not have the vector tools that I was looking for. And so ultimately I decided that I wanted to move to Clip Studio Paint. And then like 3 months after that they announced the whole pricing snafu that got a lot of people up in arms. And like, I have my opinions on that, but they're not that strong. It is what it is to an extent. And they seem to have, while the initial plan was bad, they seem to have actually gone along and like listened to audience feedback, which gets at least a few points in my book. So, rather than mingling on that, let's look at these vector lines, because what this set of tools does, we've got like, this is a set of brushes, this is a set of pastels, these are watercolors, these are blending tools. This weird, pen on an arrow thing is all tools that mess with vector lines. You can change all their little attributes, which is awesome. For example, if you went through on this line and you made the stroke slightly too hard, or slightly too harsh at one end, let's say that we don't want it to taper here, we can simply grab the adjust line width, We can choose to narrow it if we want, or thicken it, and we can choose by what degree. I've got my view all messed up still because of the advertisement. Let me fix. Woo! Woo. Undo that. Joy of joys, the old can't adjust the size when it's out of the viewport. There we go. This set of tools over here. Whee! Okay, there we go. With this little fine pen with the arrow. Good. Glad we noticed that. What we're going to do is we're going to grab our adjust line width. We're going to grab thicken if we want to make this bigger. And it's only, you see it's only thickening this little section. Because, if we control click, thickening it has added some vector points everywhere we ended that stroke. But also, or control points rather. But like, it's only thickening them relative to these points. The rest of the line is untouched. But you don't have to redraw the line. It's just, you know, there. Which is nice. However, the ones that are my favorite for cleanup and stuff, size width adjustments can occasionally be useful, and I suspect will be for this shotel. However, for most things, what I really need are two tools. Connect vector lines, which means that if you have two vector lines, like two separate ones like these ones, you can see I've got different lines selected here. You can like just run this together and it will try to connect them. So now those two are connected. This one is still separate. We might be able to merge them, but I suspect that because the ends aren't matching so much, it won't. There's like a whole mess of lines down here. I can try to run it through and see what it does. Well, but solidified it into... Oh, okay, and because those ends connected, solidified it into 3. But now the end of this vector line is kind of marked as over there, so, you know. Okay, we can do some cleanup there. The other thing that you can do, and actually I don't necessarily want to merge this one, because I kind of want to just toss it. And then toss most of these, including that one. And then we can go back to our normal pen tool. We got our G pen. We make sure we're on the right layer. Make sure we've got the right color. And we can make some new lines here. But the other thing that's useful, and I even showed it a little bit there. Let's see. Sometimes it's fun to just try to get the right line, and it's still easier than messing with control points. The other benefit, though, is they have a special vector eraser, too. And you can set its different rules to do different things, but the one that I always stinking use, always handy. It erase, let me make sure I'm on the vector one, and it is this erase up to intersection, which means that if I have a line that's drawn right through here, let's make it a smaller one, this is one vector line. The whole thing's a line. However, if you hit erase, just on this little bit, it will erase all of the line until it intersects with another vector. That's incredibly useful for cleaning up weird loose edges like this. Or like this. Whoops, I don't want both of them, I just want to lose one of them. There we go, there we go. We got kind of freeform stuff going for the most part on this. I actually like this edge being here, or else it'd be a good example. Same with that. I kind of like the freeform sketchiness of this to an extent. I want to clean up stuff that looks full-on messy, but like the looseness of it is not bad. However, some of these I may want to clean up some of those edges. I think I'm gonna lose that. Not bad texture there, but and then some of these have a certain level of redundancy going on with the way they've landed, because we did have to go back over some stuff. And it means that I can just sort of get in there and like, whoops, clear out any weird little lines. I can also just drag, if there's a little section that's just in a bad place, I can just, okay. Oh, okay, those are connected, got it. But basically, I can just sort of like scoot it out of the way. Thought there was another line in there, it looked too dark. Pardon me. However, I believe there was also a certain amount of intention with that, as I was trying to darken sides that would be in shadow from the light source. I'm not sure why I was doing that when I was still in this line sketchy phase. It's a little early to be doing it, but I mean, we do know that I have a long history of doing the art too early. I kind of like the bigger one there. I don't need them both. I'm gonna toss all like this little one. Whoop! No, this little one. There we go. Little line weight. And yeah, I'm just doing a little cleanup. Not anything crazy, but it means that we can make this look a little more polished. And where that's going to matter, actually, neither of those lines should be there. What are those? The problem is I'm kind of growing on this weird, like, double edge on this, too. But what we definitely do need to clean up are the hands. Those are going to be the biggest thing by, like, a significant margin, actually. We may reduce that bump or, like, flare it out. Let's see. And then we can go back to our fun little vector tools and take this new line we've made, line it up just so, and then if we want, we can even connect it so that it'll follow the same rules and logic and physics and all that jazz. To the extent that any of those apply to this. Let's see. Okay. Well, let's see, we can use our lovely little vector eraser to clean up weird fragmenty doohickeys like that. The hair is obviously super sketchy. We're going to want to refine that. And the hand, I mean, the shape of that one's generally right. I'm going to want to refine the knuckles a little bit, give it some depth there. And I suppose now is the time, if ever there was one. Let's clean up a few other little things first. Because I know what I'm going to want to do more, even with this sketchier style. Like, we can lose that, lose this. Where was the other one? There was one I was aiming for. I had it in mind. Because it wasn't that one. Ah, right. Right, we can kind of get the underlying line out of there. Gives the knuckles their curves, but we're going to have to work on that, obviously. Okay. And obviously the hair is, like, super sketchy. We'll have to work on that as well. However, what I really want to focus on is cleaning up some of the weird line connections, because I like the scratchy style. More and more as I look at it, weirdly. And I say style, it was 100% an accident. I'm not going to pretend that this was intentional, and I'm not going to pretend that it's masterful. However, it is aligning with kind of what I want with this. And also with we're not sure we're going to have the full line work in the final piece, although we probably will to an extent. But it may not be super visible with the high contrast going on. It's at least not in anywhere that isn't bounded in white. So we'll see what happens. Like, I don't know, I can clear out that, because that shouldn't be there. I can extend this. Hold on, I've got the wrong tool. Yeah, I could tell. That was the layer grab. I must have hit the hotkey for it. Okay, that should help with fills. But that's the biggest downside of this style, is fill tool not going to play super nice with it. Ah, okay, here's an example of a line that we can use one of these tools on a little more. Adjust line width, narrow it. Just this one a little bit. That one to an extent. And then I can grab this and scooch its end in so it doesn't overlap so much. Yeah, stuff here, we can merge these. And then we can narrow the line, or adjust the line width together. Adjust line width, narrow. Make this one section a little less dramatically different. This looks like it's a separation as well. Yeah, I thought so. So connecting it can help with some of those harsher edges. Although it still leaves these square control points, which, in my experience, tend to be something of a pain to deal with. I'd rather that the merged lines lost those, but I'm sure there are logical reasons they don't. But the biggest thing that I want to connect it is the arcs of this. Like, along this blade here, because it has the by far, like, out of the whole rest of the piece. Also, did we move the line layer or something? It feels like it doesn't line up super great anymore. And maybe it never did, but, like, it feels like it's more off than it used to be. I must have done it when I was, like, using one of these tools. It's like that. Well, no, because now the hair does. I must have done it while I was doing the lighting. Well, that's a right shame. Oh boy. Okay, hold on. That's looking pretty good on everything but the hair. That'll have to do. Every time I always manage to, like, zigzag that just a little bit. Like, whoops. Okay, we'll have to fix it on the head, but then again, I kind of like the silhouette placement better than I like this final sketch in terms of the head. It's a little more reserved, almost. Still threatening, though. This helps with that. Okay. But yeah, you can see, though, that we've got, like, really inconsistent line width, especially on this inner metal edge that should be clean and sharp. Unlike the fabric, which can have bunches and weird shadows and such, this is metal and it's well made. It should be fairly consistent. The border on the top has this issue, and the arc inside really has it. And those are two lines that I proper want to fix today, before we maybe take on the hands, if my hands are feeling up to it. Let's use some connections first. Well, let's get back to the actual, like, sketch layer. Okay, I can tell this is disconnected because of the moving tails. Good, okay, hold on. Make sure that those two are connected. Make sure that these are connected. And I guess you kind of have to get the ends of both lines in it. Alright, now this has become one continuous line. Now, there's a few things that we can do with that. We don't need to continue it to make it continuous to adjust the width. Like, as we showed, we can do it with, like, specific control point sections. We could have also just done that while it was its own line. Easy enough. Like, I can mitigate this a little bit and make it a little wider there if I truly wanted to. Oh, I'm skeptical that I ought to. We could thicken it by, like, 1 point over here for a little bit while it's still close. There we go. And, like, a little bit on that, too. Help with our perspective. And that one for consistency's sake. However, the real reason is this other tool that we haven't used in many a stream. And that is the Simplify Vector line. See, whoops. When you've got a giant line like this, especially one made of other merged lines, you end up with an awful lot of control points. And the more control points there are, the more places for weird bumps. Most of them aren't that big, but there's lots of room for, like, little zigzags like there, this little knot here, things like that. If we simplify the entire line, we may have to do this a few times. We don't necessarily have to do it in full swaths. We can do it in sections, but we do that, and you can see we've got a lot fewer control points on this now, which generally means an easier curve, because these aren't just, like, connecting the lines from A to B to C. You can see here there's, like, arc there, like, it's a smooth continuous arc. It calculates, I believe they're Bezier or Bezier, I'm not entirely sure how to say it, curves, which means that they're basically figuring out the optimal curve, or at least a reasonable curve from one to the next. And because you can see, I can move this point, and suddenly it's calculating, like, a super sharp curve over here, and a really flat one over there. Or I can leave it as is. I can move it here and really flatten it out, and make it more curved. We can leave it alone. But what that generally means is that for something that's sharp and metallic like this, which needs to have a fairly consistent forged shape rather than a more naturalistic freehand one, let's try simplifying it once more, and it will simplify towards generally a better curve. You can take it too far and have it, like, fail. Like, I feel like this has actually made it slightly wonkier and flat in some places, so we can go back a little. The other thing, however, I believe, and I need to remember how to do this exactly. Nope, that deletes the line as a whole. I think there's an option to delete a control point. No, that's the whole line, I can tell. Control point, delete control point. We go in here. I think, okay, hold on. If I do it with this one. Oh, I shouldn't. Ah, okay. So I can remove those pesky square ones. Because what you might notice about the square ones is they tend to be causing sharper curves. These two are actually playing very nice. These three are not. If we have just one there, or even perhaps 0, it'll smooth that little knotted up section out. And again, To do this for every single line of a drawing would be agonizingly slow and meticulous, even for one that's as comparatively not like hyper detail as this. And this is still fairly detailed by our standards, of course, but like in the grand sense of things. If I toss that one, and then I just add a normal control point there, we can smooth that curve out. And you see that this normal control point is not getting as much sharpness. I believe that's because the square control points, in addition to marking the end of a line, also tend to control the way that a line tapers, because they mark the end. And sometimes when you merge the lines, that ends up with really weird funkiness in the middle. These two are being real nice, but even then you can see that it is like slightly more like bent out. Like there's a few places that match it. Like this is not completely smooth, but there's like a little lump there. I don't dislike it though. It's perfectly fine. We can go back to the default move control points, center that, smooth it a bit. We can smooth this even more. And it just, for lines where it really needs that extra little touch, it can go a long way to get in there with this. And you can see that that looks much better than it used to. Okay, like try to smooth that curve a little bit. Yeah. Okay. Like, I like that. And I can also control, like you see the taper that really kicks in for this last one. And also bring that more towards the point. We could add a control point, but I actually don't necessarily want to mess with the arc too much. And I worry that even what we've done, like, doesn't necessarily look the best having it. Okay, let's add a control point and see. Let's add one here. Let's bring this, like, to the actual point. And we'll, like, move our control points to try to make the curve play a little nicer with it and look a little more natural. Interesting. Because technically it should probably converge on that point. But it really looks like it ought to converge more on this little point right here. By the way, you can see that these like quick, sketchy, highly bendy ones end up with just a ton of control points. So it's also sometimes worth simplifying if you end up with so much that it causes your computer to lag, which is not a thing we've ever encountered, but it's a thing I have heard stories of. It's not a situation we want to find ourselves in. Let's actually, like, let's see what happens if we aim it more towards that. Have it follow the smoother arc of the piece. That just looks more natural. Even if it's, well, I don't know, having that as a fully sharpened point wouldn't be absurd either. Okay, cool. Cool. Having that one line, like, cleaned up, I think does add a lot. There's, like, one more line. I want to simplify that one. Hold on. Never mind. Yeah, okay, it's got too many end control points. That's a mess. What I think I actually want to do is just adjust the line width down a little bit on these ends. Oh, really? You're not going to be able to, like, I can't just adjust this middle point? Oh, what a messy mess this is. This is what happens when you merge, like, a whole bunch of little lines. Why does that affect the whole line? Okay, I guess, like, we got a couple options. One of them is just to go through and, like, add another line of slightly more depth in there that just has to match the ends, or clean them up with the erase tool, more likely. Just to, like, you know. Not the easiest thing in the world to do, which is why it's not really what you want to do either. But that at least smooths that joint out. And then I want to, you know, use the connect on this one. Because these lines are so thick that having a double up here, unlike here where it like kind of looks like sort of smooth and like a fold, once again this is metal so it should be solid, and it's right more by the viewer, so it's very big and more obvious when something is off. Which means, okay, I'm gonna narrow that just a little bit. Not too much though. Just that little, we'll go back one. Nah, okay. Ah, okay, I can actually try to thicken this line here. They're two separate lines. Why are you narrowing and thickening together? And now I can put it back and it's fine. Okay, anyway, overthinking that. That one's not nearly so important as this. There we go. Now, even with like a fairly bold line there, which I am actually going to simplify somewhat, There we go. But even with that bold line, this isn't nearly so jarring as it was. And I'm not necessarily opposed to that line being bold. It's a very important line in the drawing. However, I do want it to be consistent. And this section is like a little too big still. I know you can adjust it by larger increments, but I like being able to sort of like do it actually incrementally, just like little bit by little bit. There's a little better control over it. Okay. And see, now we still get the sketchy part for where it's beneficial when we want the like roughness of the fabric and the patterns there, but we're not necessarily having to deal with it in the harsh, like clean edges of the metal where we want it to look sharp. At least not nearly so bad as it was. Let's see. I mean, and again, we can try connecting these. I'll smooth that out. I kind of like this wrist one being open as it is. But some like here. Some like maybe the elbow if it doesn't break the curve of it too much. Yeah, okay, that's fine. This neck, these should really be jeepers what's happening with the neck. Okay, before I merge those, let's maybe just clean up the like massive number of weird stray lines we have around the neck. Oh, what is this? Oh no. How many times did we redraw the neck? Okay. One line, which is pretty much always better than a multitude of them. Then let's just vector erase all the rest of that nonsense. Whoa, okay. And again, if we hide the hair layer, I'm sure we'll find some other... Yep, okay, let's clear that out. Let's clean this up. As you can see, connecting it doesn't inherently fix, like, if it's already a complete mess. Whoa, okay. Like, this has become a U shape, so it has no end facing these now. Okay, what did that just do? Okay, we're fine, it just closed it. I still manage to, and I do this in games too, I just straight up, my hand doesn't stay in the right place on the keyboard, and so I always miss hotkeys. Always, always, always. Jeepers. See, when you give it a whole slew of stuff, it doesn't know what to do with it. Oh, I get it, because this is already a weird U-turn line. Alright, hold on. What we can do for that is I can actually, this is the other nice thing about the vector erase tool, is you can draw an intersection and then say, hey, vector erase, kill everything up to that intersection. And then you can also toss your little extra thing. And like, boom, we got rid of a lot of weird extra line that didn't make sense and was causing all sorts of weird connection problems. This upper one is also, we must have like joined two lines, or a bunch of lines here. What on earth? Oh my. This is another one of those where I may just say, hey, why don't we just... Real G pen. Slightly larger size. There we go, that managed to sort of match the thickness of both ends. Plus whatever weirdness is happening there. Scoot that down. Zoom back out. There we go. See, that sort of thing. Where we don't want, like, the funky hiccups and stuff. Okay, hold on. Then maybe I can simplify this section. Then this weird taper problem. Let's see if we can't adjust the line width of, like, just this one little bit. Nope, it affects everything. Yeah, as you can see, even with these tools, it's not like a insta fix. That'd be nice, but no. Like, do I even try to combine these, or do I just like fix this little end node manually and say, hey, good enough? Yeah, okay, that looks like normal weird elbow bump. Cool. So yeah, little things like that. No, I don't want that straight line there. And actually, looking at it, I do want to connect these two. Not necessarily the rest, but those two, and then, like, we can just simplify a little bit, clean it up. This is, for the record, a stage that I can get lost in forever, so I'm going to just try to stop soon, because otherwise we will spend all week doing this, and that's not actually all that helpful. It's important for the big spots, but it's not useful for, like, odds and ends nitpicking, and I'd much rather spend the time... Well, partly we're going to want to spend it, like, dealing with the wild flakiness of the hair. To the extent that it needs it, which isn't necessarily a massive amount. Oh, I wonder if just the hair layer also got moved separately from... No, I just want to grab the hair layer. Grab hair, move, align. Right, I forgot those were separate layers. Well, okay, hold on. There we go. Okay, so we must have moved the wrong sketch layer at some point by mistake. Awesome! That aligns... That fixes all the weird alignment problems we had. Good. Like, but places I'm going to want to clean up with the chin still. Like, that's obviously not 100% there. But we can do... It works between layers too, this eraser. So, like, I can clear out this little bit of, like, neckline that's behind the hair, and it just tosses stuff behind the hair without losing the whole neck. It's real nice. And likewise, the vector tool, we can try to connect some of this stuff. I figured with so many little strokes in there, it would, yeah, do something like that. And try just simplifying them, though. If you simplify any line enough, however, it does eventually become super angular. So you have to be careful with that. Because simplifying is removing these control points that add the curvature. So if you take, like, a nice bend and you simplify the heck out of it, it will ruin it. Even that. You can see, like, the bendier it is, the more points it needs to keep that smooth curve. And then we can just... Oops. Simplify and simplify and simplify and simplify and simplify. And eventually it'll stop doing it because it's like you literally can't keep anything close if you remove any more. But we've lost some of the smoothness, we've ended up with some jankiness. Still, you can ultimately get back to it, but like the tool can only do so much. And sometimes the intermediary stages are actually worse because it's like kept the wrong control points, and like another iteration is what it takes to actually fix it. But all that's neither here nor there. Control point delete. Zoop. Bop, bop. 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 There we go. Smoother. Okay. Again, I could end up nitpicking that all week. We don't want to do that. We'll come back to line work and refine where it needs, probably after the break. And then, next time, I think we'll be able to get into some proper value blocking. Depending on how long my hands hold out, of course. We'll see whose hands hold out longer, Miquella's or my own. Because I want to finish the hand line work. Like, the hair line work, I suspect, honestly, we're going to get in there, we're going to have the line work as a guide, we're going to do a lot of the light and shadow and value, and then we're going to want to redo the line work. I think that's just sort of going to be the way of it. Also, I am going to go ahead and lose this, because the hair already provides the much nicer, like much better, much cleaner version there. And that looks a little... Like, how much that'll show up in the final? Who knows? We've kept it in our silhouette to an extent, because it is an important part of Miquella. But it also might be notable if it's not there. We'll see. Still, whatever we do next, I do think it's going to be the hands, though, honestly. Whatever it'll be, it will be after this little break. So take a chance, drink some water, stand up, use the restroom, whatever you need to do. I'm going to give my hands a little bit of a pause, let my rest for a couple minutes, and we'll be back in just a bit, so hang in there. I wondered if, like, all three layers have moved. Okay, before we do the pause, I'm going to fix what we've broken. Okay, never mind. It was never it never fully worked, I guess. I mean, some of those lines go way off. Okay. Better to have it aligned with the bottom and the top then. And then on the silhouette layer, let's just do a tiny little bit of cleanup, shall we? Yes. Okay, back to business. And by back to business, I mean back to break. See y'all in just a couple minutes. Howdys and salutations again, y'all. Sorry for the longer than expected wait. Y'all know that GIF where Steve Harvey just shouts, "Kill, yes"? I may have gotten sent that on loop and slightly lost track of time. It's hysterical. It's not necessarily out of character, but without the context of the show and like, I mean, even then, it's a little bold, even by his standards and by that game show standards. Oh. He is so excited that kill is on the board. It's it's great. He plays it up very well. I hope he's not actually that enthusiastic about the concept of murder being an answer for that question. Question itself is dreadful, but like sticking just that GIF out of context will never not make me at least chuckle. Ow, ow. Okay, hand. Come on, work with me here. Work with me. Oh, this is a different problem. Is that an ingrown nail or something? Wow, why does my hand sting all of a sudden? Crikey. Sorry about that. If this keeps up for more than like a moment, I may have to pause the stream just because I won't be able to draw with it doing that. Jeepers. And again, not that that's the end of the world necessarily. We will pick this up again tomorrow, where we will hopefully get some more flats, but at the very least, we'll get the hands done, I think, before the end of the month. And I'm not going to try to, like, hold my hands at weird angles as references right now, because, once again, unhappy. But I'm going to look up hand, try to find images of hand holding. Although, if I look that up, I'm probably going to get a bunch of romantic stuff, which ain't exactly what we're aiming for. And rip stock photo. I almost spelled photo with an F. My word. Mein Wort. Mein Wort. Okay. Some of these are at roughly the right angle. Most of them aren't. The wondrous and dreadful thing about hands is they can be in so many different wonderful poses. Ow. Ouch. That's not the worst. But that one might be better. And most of these are just of people holding those, like, hand exercise weight things. I guess I did look up hand grip. Which, yeah, okay, fair enough. Fair enough. That's on me. But most of the time when they're demoing those, the problem is they show, like, the palm, the inside of the hand. And truthfully, the reference I need is the outside. From a weird angle. Okay, that's an ad for katana grips. The quality of which I would question. Yeah, this is why I don't share stock photos on stream. This is a stinking mess. Jeepers. That's made me flash back to, like... Oh, man. In hindsight... Okay, wow. That's a lot to parse. Well, maybe not. Maybe... I remember in the school library once we were looking for images of just a dragon on, just on the school computers, because we needed them for, like, a medieval story PowerPoint. And, let's just say we ran across, like, literally just typing in the word dragon into, I guess it was Bing at that point, just turned up just the weirdest nonsense. And we're like, oh, cool, we don't want to be seen looking at this at school. Like, well... We did not linger on it. We were, you know, actually pressed for time trying to get a presentation done. But we were just like, oh, what? Really? Why did this come up before, like, other search results? Okay. So, this is the part where he kills you. No, we're not playing Portal 2. We should play Portal 2 sometime. I have never beaten that game, or in fact even gotten remotely close. I think I made it to like stage 9, which is before anything like exciting story-wise even happens. Like 1-9. I have beaten the co-op mode, which is a joy. And weirdly replayable because I just super forget how all the puzzles work. I remember like one of the early ones where you've got the one person in a maze and the other one with a button that will kill them in the maze. We know it's not supposed to, but we also know that it will. That really was fun. Played that with my brother. Portal 2 co-op. Always a gem. And I've played Portal 1, although I made it further than I did in Portal 2, but still not massively far. Pardon me. And then we can add a little more depth to the thumb, a little more bump, a little more curve out. Just still kind of like exaggerated a little bit. Because I feel like most of it's going to end up being behind that, which actually would mean this curve out should temper a little bit. Doesn't have to temper crazy much, but like, you know, a bit. And like, honestly, that's not a ton of additional detail. Hold on, does that imply that the fingers are actually more like this? What's with this ridge? That would change things somewhat. Yeah, but I think that is actually true. I just straight up forgot about a joint. Okay, then we'll have to put a little more thought into those fingers. Take 2. At least with the big one, the pointer finger. These other ones still don't necessarily require a massive amount of thought. The catch, though, is that for whatever reason, the way I draw hands seems to be rather heavily biased towards, like, older, like, hands that have done a lot of labor, that have, like, taken a beating over the years, and, like, a little beaten up and scraggly, and I don't necessarily draw youthful hands well. Which was something we actually learned back on V1 of this project 6 months ago. Okay, hold on. Yeah, no, that would have to be that knuckle, which means that that's then that, and then those are wrapped under, and the pointer fingers actually... Okay. Well, I thought the pointer finger was looking a little, like, weirdly bloated. Still don't know why I've got it starting somewhere different. It's... Okay, hold on. Even that needs to be more like this. I'm not gonna worry about fingernails too overly much, truthfully told. Ah, jeepers. It was looking so good when it was proportionally wrong. Take a moment. Work on the angles and proportions of these specifically. There we go. Yep, should be arcing up because we're below it. Knew I had the angle on that wrong somewhere, I just couldn't quite pinpoint what it was. And I think these ought to be curved more like that, including this last one. Whoops. We'll use the vector erase to not lose too much on that. And the pointer finger, though, is just weird angle. Why it even at that angle? It should be with everyone else, and then just, like, not curving in when the others do. This last little bit can, of course, curve in somewhat. It's going to have the finger itself on it, too. And no, that really ought to still just curve like that, and then that whole weirdness gets shifted more towards the thumb. Okay, come on. Let's play nice. Well, drawing it out with more detail has made me realize one thing. Pinky finger should be bent in more. Which is fine, that actually adds something a little more dynamic to the piece. The piece. Feels pretentious saying that this early on into something that's progressing the way this has been. Let's give it a little time still before we call it that. Yeah, because that's the thing about fingers also, is they're not like just one nice smooth arc. There's so many little like interesting nooks and crannies on them. Which is cool, but in this moment, inconvenient. Still, I mean, essential for our survival and through evolutionary history of all those tens and hundreds of thousands of years that we've had them, so I really can't complain all that much. I mean, theoretically I could. Humans are excellent at complaining. But I'm not going to, because that would be phenomenally dumb. And now the hand looks like it might be a little too far away from everything else, but that's okay. Reminding myself silhouette-wise how much of this will even be visible. Probably not a ton in any great detail. Still, jeepers, that's not great. Let's take a pause, look at the other one, then come back. The other one's in actually potentially a more fortunate spot, or potentially worse. We'll see. Because so much less of it is visible at this angle. Either it's going to be actually pretty convenient, we'll be able to get all the details that we want with minimal effort, or it's not going to be that. However, so far, it's playing rather nicely. There we go. And, yeah, I'm not going to gripe at that. That looks pretty decent. Captures the idea well. It'll have the strand coming out of it. Yeah, okay, so, yeah, I mean, it's not a genius hand, but it's simple and straight to the point. I mean, if we really wanted to give it, like, a little more properness. Let's see, if he's holding it like that, then yeah, that's what I thought. And make sure it's got the thumb over there proper like, connected in, adding a little more shape to the wrist. But not too much because it's mostly out of the way, not super visible. String will tie into it nicely. hair. Rotate it just a hair more. Okay, save that. Hide it, go into the normal sketch layer. Grab the old hand and simply remove it. Old, I guess that's the left hand. Hide it. We can pop our new hands into the picture. Fits like a glove. Wow, even when I'm like not feeling 100%, I can still make really stupid puns. Happy with that. Okay. Remove that there. This will be hands. Which will probably get merged into the main sketch at the end, truth be told. Should fit naturally enough. Okay. So that one's good. And really, all that I want to do, honestly, my main motive here, my wrist is hurting. No, my wrist is mostly fine. Well, actually, it's a little bit. It's not mad, but it's like tight, which is probably that. I don't know if that might be worse. So I need to be careful with that. Ow. But really, my one goal for tonight, and I hope this ain't pushing it too far. We'll see. Is to just get the hands drawn so that next time I don't have to think about line work. Because I'm sure we'll come back and do the hair later, but I kind of, much like with Millennia, where the hair ended up being so much more defined by the values and the color and like the shape of the colors. This one has the braids, which will be a little different, but even then, the hair is just not going to be nearly so heavily defined by the lines as it is by the shapes. And so I'm not actually all that worried about lining up the hairlines right now. Now, I do recall distinctly that in Millennia, I was cursing my past self when I got to the hair, and I was like, dag nabbit, I wish I had more lines to go off of. But I think more lines would have honestly been bad for it. Okay. So I'm going to be 100% real here. The new hand looked bad garbo. If I add just like sticking these lines to the old hand, make me realize that maybe I drew old hand bad, but not as bad as new hand. So I'm gonna go ahead, hide this, bring back the new sketch hands layer. I mean, the shape feels not as bad as it ought to, but it's clearly still bad, so I'm gonna refresh. We can do those delicate lines again as we need. I think that like some of the inversion around the fingers, like on the outer silhouette, was not good, and that was part of the problem. I like the thumb though. Okay, we'll take the old sketch, we'll bring it back, we'll make it a little foggier, and then let's have another go at this, shall we? Once more. We'll sort of have like that kind of fleshy connection that thumbs and fingers do. We'll have that. We've got the knuckle here. And that feels like too big for this finger. Possible I've gotten the thumb angle a little bad too, but that's just something we're gonna have to live with, if it's the case. And I'm gonna leave it like that and not worry too much about a nail. I don't think that's essential right now. And I think it actually adds, like, it would add detail where we don't want it. Like, we can... Here, I'll add a faint one, just in case. But if you get the angle wrong, it makes the finger look more flat. And if you get the angle right, it still draws attention to a weird place. So this does make me realize that, like, possibly simple curves like this are going to be better for what we're doing. Except for the pinky, where we're going to be having a little bit more fun with it, because it, like, arcs behind and can do some fun stuff. I'm gonna, let's see, zooming out, hiding the underlying sketch. That at least looks like it could maybe, you know, be a hand gripping something. Still feels like the pointer finger ought to, like, curl in more, but if it doesn't, it's, you know, this is okay. We can have it, like, follow along the spine of this a little more. That would probably be a more natural pose, if you're gonna do that. And then I think I may have this one also, like, tied in a little bit more. Or at least fall behind the finger in front of it just a little bit more. That way we continue the general shape of it's actually gripping along the contour of the handle here. And not just, you know, randomly. There we go. Whoops, okay. We can even, like, you know, change the angle of the pointer finger a little bit. Just testing here. Have that actually sort of show through behind. Those arc below it. Being able to see the underside of the fingers almost always seems to give them a little bit of extra depth that the tops just don't quite capture. The pointer finger probably ought to go further than the thumb, huh? Yeah. And it still really ought to be going along the side of it, though, not along the top, if we're following this grip as best as we can. There's the handle. That kind of means that it's gonna arc like this and then around like that. Gonna go some distance or arcing back up. And I already hate how that looks. Creepy as all get out. Oh, okay, now we're starting to get, like, closer. But really, it feels like this ought to be... You know what? You know what? No, we're doing the... Yes, you can have the pose where you got your finger running along it, but that's not necessarily the pose you'd have if you were actually trying to strike with it. And it's drawing, as much as, like, having a little variance is always, like, not necessarily a bad thing, it helps mix things up. It also, variance, tends to draw the eye, unless there's, like, you're just in a whole mix of variance, in which case it doesn't do it so much. Sort of like Baroque art, where there's so much detail everywhere that it kind of washes out into nothing. If you have a ton of detail everywhere, then detail itself isn't really a differentiator, so it doesn't stand out. Possible I have a bias against Baroque art, but that's unrelated. What's relevant here, though, is that we don't have that massive swath of detail everywhere, so if we do add extra little details and odds and ends to this, it really, it pops more than we want it to. And I wish I hadn't deleted the one from, like, 4 iterations ago that I knew I would regret erasing when I did it. But then I just plowed ahead. Like a fool. No, I want this to actually be arcing around it as well, just like the other finger was. Thought that was a straight line. Okay, here we've got. Now, what's the best way to connect those? Yeah, it's really more like that, isn't it? Man, hands are so all or nothing for me right now, which means I feel like I'm actually getting closer to mastering them, but I'm not there yet. Certain angles I'm starting to get down and to have simple shapes and forms that I can capture them quick, but obviously certain angles, we haven't gotten to that point yet. And as you can plainly see, this is not the most common angle to draw this from, so, you know. Pointer finger feels too short, truthfully. I don't know what that line is, or which layer it's on. Is that the old finger line? Yeah, that was definitely wrong, to be fair. Here, let me hide the hand sketch. Yeah, okay, yeah, no, that was super wrong. Let me at least grab this old one and scoot it out of the way. Make way for the next generation of hand. Okay. I want to merge these layers. Guess I can't merge. Oh, it's because one of them's hidden. Yep. Old hand. Easy enough. Let me pop new hand in. We think how good that one looks and how flat this one looks. That's interesting. It almost makes me think the fingers might just be a little too small. Well, not specifically, but certain parts of them are. Actually, overall, they might be as well, but... in general, having them larger would allow us to curl them more on the inside and allow them to actually wrap around the shape better, which is what they should be doing. And it fits the old size that the sketch had originally, but man, it still just looks kind of bad. I'm gonna have to find references before we go too far on that. Okay, now that's interesting. Possibly. I need to rethink where the knuckles are. Because that was something that we had wrong in our original sketch in any case. Have we considered that they should really be more like... probably not that far down, but where they are, they ought to be arcing more like this. Or rather, like that, perhaps. Okay, let me think for a second. Okay, whoa, where'd that scroll go? Okay, there we go. Man, every picture is the wrong side of the hand. Ah, okay, here's one. Interesting. If I rotate this to match a little bit. . 'Cause end up with a pointer finger, and in fact knuckles in general, arcing more like this. To clarify, more like this. Ugh. There. With it actually, like, being up with the thumb, raised up and bent under a little bit. Now, it's possible that we're just at the wrong angle for it. Right, it's very plausible. We're also going to be rotated slightly more. Technically, it might be more like... Okay. Let's just clean up all that mess. Got this, it kind of curls under. And like pinky finger just like immediately goes. One's only slightly more. And then they've got like a very slight... Oh, no, that's the wrong angle on it though. This one is slightly raised, and we'd be able to see it from under. And then the pointer is more raised. But again, we're going to be seeing it from a slightly different view. And perhaps a less bloated one, my word. Still. We move this out just a little bit so that the pinky finger is like still has some depth to it at all. And it's immediately being blocked by this other one, which also still has depth to it. That one we might actually see a tiny bit of the side of it, because this one is going to be arcing more downwards. And then the pointer finger going to fix because it's just all super wonky. Even if it's like this, we're still going to be seeing the underside of it, generally speaking. Means it's going to tilt the other way, dagnabbit. What of it we can see? Possible that I am not quite in the mindset at this point with my wrist tiring out to finish this hand, but this is certainly a regression from where we were. Let's see how far it's going to let me undo. Okay, let's see how far it's going to let us go. As you can see, Clip Studio Paint has a fairly forgiving undo buffer. By fairly, I mean extraordinarily. Truly wonderful. That said, again, the delicateness of this is sort of part of the problem. I'm going to hide that one. I'm going to throw one more layer on so that we're not destroying it. And we'll have one more go before the stream's out. How's about that? Leaving the thumb, of course, as it is, with that lovely sway to it. Secondary crease might not be visible. Well, maybe it'd be a little bit on that one. Okay, and then it's just a matter of like smoothing this out around the pinky finger. Pinky should not, in fact, be massive. And then maybe shrinking the whole shebang, maybe not, we'll see. Because we don't want it to look flat, we do want it to still look like it's, you know, flush. Okay. We can add like a little bit of a ridge, add some curve to that. And I do like the idea of the pinky even like folding under a little more than the others. Pinkies always are kind of funky. Not a complaint, they're just like an unusual finger. Gold? Oh, it's just a bad tangent. Yeah, that is more right. Okay. Okay, okay. Still too knobbly. I lean towards them knobbly hands. I'm sorry. It's just the way my hands do. Does that look perfect? No. Does it look much better than where we were leaving before? Yes. Am I going to leave it there for now, and then we'll just have to pick it up later? Also, yes. I think... Let's see, let's compare them real quick. We've got old hands and new hand. New hand seems to fit the pose better. There's just something wrong with that far edge of it, really. So I'm going to take sketch hands, and I'm actually going to dunk this part out of it. Deselect. Please let me rename it. Okay, thank heavens. Old hand B. Got that one. Man, this piece more than any other has had so many like things we have to iterate like this. Okay. All right, we want sketch hands. We don't want old hand B. Let's sketch L hand, I guess. This will be sketch R hand. Sketch R hand. Okay. Thumb feels a little too big, and then top part of hand feels a little too not right. I may fidget with that a little more today. Possibly. Oh, that's too far down. Okay, hold on. Go ahead and toss that. Let me go back now. Onto sketch. Okay. Oh, it's not quite the smooth transition into the arm that it once was. That's a right tragedy, but it also, yeah, okay, hold on. Hold on. Let me legitimately shrink this thumb a little bit. I don't think it was wrong before, but it definitely is with the current size and shape of the hand. We can always add a little bit of thumbnail and a little bit of sketch. Well, it's that the other fingers are probably a little too big too, but that's okay. Because this is still better than where we left off, I think. And in any case, regardless of whether or not I want to keep tweaking this, I'm not going to be able to do any more tonight because I can feel my wrist actually getting mad at me now, which means I need to stop. Pushed it right to the end, probably pushed it further than we ought to have. That's okay. That's okay. We'll leave it at that. We'll get to some more fun shade and stuff on the morrow, because I don't think we'll mess with line work anymore, even if, like, maybe we'll have a hand breakthrough. I kind of doubt it. I wanted to hand future me a better stop than that, but at least we got one of them sorted out. And a lot of the other little odds and ends cleaned up, including the one that was really bothering me, which was the weird line work on the Shotel. So, with that being the way it is, and with my wrists needing me to wrap for the night, I will leave y'all to your workings and doings and excitements of the eve, and hopefully I will catch y'all on the flip side. And then tomorrow, as a reminder, will be our last stream before Swordtember. So we'll be jumping all in on that. I assume they're still doing it. That's going to kick off on Friday, although my stream obviously will kick off on Sunday. We'll already have a few that we got to post before then. Should be fun times. Until then, I hope y'all have a wonderful day, a wonderful evening, morning, mid-afternoon. Whencever you may find yourselves, I hope it's lovely. And until next time, have a good one, y'all.